webinar of IDEA's Office of Interdisciplinary Studies. We have been doing these webinar series as part of our MSc Development Practice program. And we have done a couple of webinars, and we are happy to share the playlist of the webinars which we have done already in the chat box. And also the program MSc Development Practice, which is commencing in August from the Delhi facility of Jindal, a global university. And again, the details will be up in the chat box. And we are very delighted to have Dr. Deepali, Aparajita, Dungdung, and Dr. Rituparna Patgiri today for our webinar on academic blogging, and very rightfully titled as Translating Knowledge, Writing Beyond the Academy. That too, we are going to learn from the lessons of doing sociology. Both Dr. Rituparna and Dr. Deepali are the and more we'll get to know from them, are the people behind doing sociology. Some of us are very familiar with doing sociology, at least for few if you're new to this. It's doing sociology is a pioneering blog in the country. I'm not putting it at a higher pedestal in any case, but because I've been very keenly following whatever the team has been doing, and it's in the last 5 years what you all have achieved is really wonderful. Firstly, and a very big congratulations for turning 5. And we have been like I said, we have been doing a couple of webinars, and most of it has been thematic, and like we have been covering different themes of development, etc. But a huge gap which we found in all our communications, and also with respect to how we imagine academia, is how to translate this knowledge to a larger reading public, or like a public who wants to engage with these issues. And and today we have Dr. Rituparna and Dr. Deepali to take us through the journey of doing sociology, and also in general, what does it mean? Like what is the probably the theoretical backing behind doing all this, and and what goes behind it, and like how we can engage with the larger public. I'll try to give a very brief introduction to both our speakers today. Dr. Rituparna is an assistant professor of sociology at the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, Indian Institute of Technology, Guwahati. Her interest lies at exploring questions of culture, food, media, gender, and pedagogy. Dr. Patgiri is passionate about making academic knowledge accessible to the public, and is one of the co-founders of Doing Sociology, an academic blog dedicated to promoting sociological consciousness among young students. She's also serving as an associate editor of the South Asian region in Society, a journal published by Springer Nature that explores the latest scholarship on the central questions of contemporary society. She's also a convener of the ad hoc group 3, Food Culture Society of the Indian Sociological Society, ISS. Welcome, Rituparna, to the webinar. And we have Dr. Deepali Aparajita Dungdung, who's an assistant professor at the University Department of Sociology, Ranchi University. She's previously taught in the School of Global Affairs, Ambedkar University, Delhi, and Center for Quantitative Economics and Data Science, Birla Institute of Technology, MESRA. Her areas of interest include gender, migration, ethnicity, language, and development. She's also a co-founder of Doing Sociology, an independent academic blog from the Global South, aimed at making sociology accessible to young students and scholars. She's an editorial board member of the journal Feminist Anthropology. Welcome, Dr. Deepali, to the webinar today. So we have planned today's webinar in such a way that the first speaker, both the speakers will speak for 20 minutes each, and then we can open up the question answer session, and you can either raise your hand, we can unmute you to speak, or like put your comments or questions in the chat box as the speaker speaks, which we can take up later. And with that much, over to you, Dr. Rituparna, and please go ahead, and yeah, you have 20.
Thank you, Dr. Balu, for the very kind invitation and the introduction. And thank you to IDEAS, JGU, for giving us the support. I'm glad that the center is taking shape slowly, that I think I spoke on food in one of the initial lectures sometime last year. I'm happy to see that the center has progressed. It gives me a sort of, satisfactory feeling to see ideas thriving. Thank you to everyone for joining and taking an interest in doing sociology. And let me very quickly sort of, take you in this journey of why and how did we start doing sociology and what was the need for it. So if one looks at higher education, particularly social sciences and humanities, it has faced a significant crisis in recent times, and several departments have been shut down and redundancies announced, funds cut in many disciplines, which is a global phenomena. All of us know what is happening in the US, the UK, and there is a direct link between neoliberalism, the rise of right-wing regimes, and attacks on higher education. And in contemporary times, there has been a lot of attention on the changing nature of university spaces, both in India and globally. So you also see with the rise of populist governments and establishment of neoliberal economies that educational spaces are unsettled. Authoritarian regimes discourage creativity and curiosity. This is something that we often hear of. And this is particularly true for public universities, including in India. So there is an argument that there is also a concerted attempt to turn education itself into a capitalist commodity from a public good. And you can see the fund cuts that higher education has faced in the central government budgets. So funding for the University Grants Commission, UGC, which is the statutory organization of the government of India, has also been trimmed down. Now, specific attacks on social sciences like history, sociology, gender studies, and women's studies have also been a part of this. And one of the guidelines that was released by the UGC on 12 March 2019 announced that funds would be cut for women's studies centers across the country by up to 40%. Now, what this has meant is that there has been a surge in private universities globally, and also education is seen as a big business. Higher education is actually reduced to a mere provider of skills, and those acquiring them are seen as eligible to find employment, as Maitri Chaudhary would argue in one of her articles on social sciences. So what happens is that social sciences in such a scenario have become less relevant, and the teaching learning style that depends on something which we call academic freedom is also compromised. One can also observe how sociology and social sciences are practiced in higher education institutions. In fact, there is a disconnect between what sociology is and how it is taught. In reality, as Andre Bette would argue, sociology is grounded in empirical observations and description of facts. But in general, what happens is sociology is seen as a discipline that requires no specialized skills and training. Sociological knowledge itself is not seen as valuable and is often linked to something which is a means to an end. Bette also says that it is perceived as a soft discipline that does not require a lot of hard work. So students expect that an undergraduate degree will help them obtain a job, and then sociology is a means to an end. So the classroom itself becomes a space where hierarchies are reproduced and re-articulated. Teacher is seen as the giver of knowledge, and as such there have been demands to also revise existing curriculum as well as change the mode of teaching and learning. There have been a lot of quests to reimagine the classroom as a site of knowledge dissemination, and then we have actually been forced to think about innovations in our pedagogical practices. So it's not to say that innovations haven't happened. For instance, in Jamia Millia Islamia, at one point of time, there was a course on participatory sociology in the Department of Sociology, in which exercises were shared between teachers and students. And the goal was to work together and observe the relations between sociology and society. And most of these innovations happened within the classroom itself. But I'm talking about a time when the attacks on academic freedom basically led us to create alternative spaces outside the classroom. Just to give you a small example, if you look at the 2023 Academic Freedom Index, India ranks 161 out of 179 countries. What is also significant is that there is a gradual drop in the index and rankings. So it's not that, our academic freedom index or ranking is low, but that there has also been a gradual drop. So classrooms have become spaces where it becomes very difficult to become innovative, and there is supervision and surveillance on both faculties and students. In fact, there are many universities where cameras have been now installed to monitor teacher-student interaction. The idea is that they are going to sort of look at if there is standards of teaching maintained, but the hidden agenda is also to see if, a particular curriculum is being followed in the way that the university envisages. So a lot of faculties feel threatened when they express thoughts freely, and there is a development of a mistrust between students and teachers, where teachers are also constantly thinking that students are recording, and students are also constantly thinking that teachers are basically, saying what they believe rather than what is academically sound. Now, in this context, the role of the digital becomes very important because we live in a digital world. This webinar itself is conducted through the digital mode, and a lot of works on pedagogy also have recognized that you cannot really make innovations without thinking about the digital space. Now, this is where doing sociology comes in. The experiments with doing sociology began in March of 2020, which is a very infamous period in India and the global historical context, primarily because, we were basically marred by the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. And that was a time when, we started talking about doing sociology as a pedagogical innovation, which could sort of connect the bridge between that mistrust that was lost or that was building between students and pedagogues or teachers. So I had just started teaching in my very, early career, and so had Dr. Deepali, and we share a common PhD supervisor, Professor Matri Chaudhary, and we were sitting in her room and discussing what could be done to bridge this, mistrust, as well as build a space where we could provide young people some sort of, platform to write and read. This had also emerged from my own teaching experiences, as well as our collective ideas of dealing with the sociological practice, where we found that students were gradually being disconnected from the practice of sociology itself. For instance, the examples that I gave about, how sociology would be seen as a means to an end meant that there was no love or passion that you develop for a discipline, or, the research and the intricacies that are associated with it. You primarily only see it as a means to a degree. Now, I'm not saying that is a bad approach, but what it means is that, there is a feeling of alienation. There is a sense of disconnect. At the same time, we had done some research, and the finding was that there were blogs as well as platforms abroad, particularly in global north, which provided some sort of access to open knowledge as well as, space for young people to write. And I had started writing as my PhD was, getting wound up and ready for submission in different kinds of digital platforms. And I realized that the training that you require, it is not a part of how we are taught to write. Because the first question that, one may definitely get asked is, what is the even point of writing a blog piece? It doesn't give you any API point. It doesn't give you any kind of faculty or research job, right? Very, very valid question. However, what it made me realize through that process of trying to write smaller pieces is it gives you a kind of conceptual theoretical clarity that probably even an academic piece doesn't bring. Why? Is because you're writing in a way where you're writing for the public. And that is a kind of public sociology that even Baraway would talk about, where you're writing to communicate to an audience who is actually desperately in need of that knowledge. So academics have been criticized, and rightfully so, for using jargon-based knowledge, which is very limited. And at the moment when we are talking about academic publishing and the way that journals function, one sees that there is a way in which you are supposed to write. It is very, very fixed. Whereas when it is a blog format, there is some sort of fluidity. Now, our pieces are generally limited from 800 words to 1500 words. Sometimes we make exceptions and publish pieces that are a bit longer. let's say around 2000 words. Again, what it does is it prepares you to communicate with an audience which is not really familiar probably with what you are working on, but gives you that space to also write in a manner that will bring that clarity. Because, the way that you have to convince someone who is not familiar with academic work, I think is the biggest challenge. It doesn't really feel challenging if you're talking about, for instance, let's say feminism in a group full of feminists. Everyone agrees. What is the big deal? But when you have to convince it to somebody who is not really familiar with any of these ideas, that's where the challenge lay. Now, this is the space within which doing sociology emerged. We initially started it on this platform called Blogger, which is freely available as part of G Suite. And we used a lot of experimental kind of methods. We would, with our pieces, have images and try to be as creative as possible. And while we were basically seeking pieces from young people, one thing that we realized is that young people were definitely eager to write and read. So we received n number of pieces from different kinds of people from different parts of the world as well as the country. And it was really, really interesting to see how young people thought about the discipline at this juncture of the pandemic, the growing importance of the digital, the shrinking classroom space, as well as how do we even look at the relevance of sociology. So it is only with these ideas and observations in mind that we launched some of our series or categories that we focus on. For instance, one of the things that we actively tried to promote is this series called What Do Sociologists Do? So the motive behind that was to sort of familiarize the outside world with the fact as part of the academic service practitioners from artists. Recently, there has been a piece by someone who does theater. So they've all done sociology in some form or the other, either at a BA level or an MA level, sometimes even at a PhD level. And then they take that sociological imagination, using C. Wright Mills's term, to their outside world or professional world. So that was a way of bridging that kind of disconnect where sociology would just be a means to an end. So our goal is to say that no, it is not just a means to end. It is actually pervasive of what one does in their everyday lives. Similarly, there's this another series that we have focused on, which is book reviews. Now, that idea itself sort of came from this understanding that journals generally have published book reviews, but anyone who has any familiarity with journal publications would realize that it is very difficult to get unsolicited book reviews published in any journal. And we wanted to give that space to young people who were reading new academic books, sometimes closely connected to the discipline and sometimes maybe not, that space to sort of write those book reviews. And as you know, probably Dr. Balu and Dr. Deepali would also agree that one of the ways you begin the journey into academic writing is through writing a book review. How do you summarize a book in 800 words or 900 words in your own words? And that sets a stepping stone into how then you take forward, other forms of academic writing. So book reviews have been something which we have really seen as only, limited to, not only limited to, journals, but also something that we could do. And a lot of book reviews are written by people who are doing their masters, some even their undergraduates, and then, of course, pursuing PhDs as well as others. So it is a space to discuss both historical and contemporary kind of authorship on multitude of topics. The other series that I, in terms of public writing, is about methodology. Now, I feel that this is again really important, primarily because Indian universities and academia have also been critiqued for a lack of methodological rigor. And if you think back about the kind of training that you have also received, take a pause and probably just think about how methods classes were relegated to one unit, or probably, one part of the curriculum, rather than something which should basically, which should basically be present in your entire writing or thesis, or the way that one thinks. Now, by giving a space for people to think about their methodological reflections, what kind of methods they may have used, what are the field notes that they may have collected, it gives them a space to write on things which probably they may not include in their either PhDs or even, in their journal articles. So it is something of a note keeping or a diary keeping outside the academic process of publishing. Needless to say, no matter when we are looking at these blog pieces, we are also looking at them with, a lot of effort in terms of peer review, because all of us are reading them and then trying to edit them as much as possible, make it as publishable as possible. However, the process is also to familiarize people with how academic, processing works in terms of both writing and the publishing of it. I also feel because it is a blog, it gives us enough space to be creative, to be flexible in terms of, whether or not we want to stick to a particular word limit, or can we be flexible at many times. And sometimes, authors also request that I want to maintain my anonymity, but still publish this piece. Will you be able to do that? And therefore, that kind of possibility is also there. So in a way, doing sociology has used the digital space, which is, a common public good, or let's just good at this moment, to create a sort of pedagogy of hope, as, Freire or bell hooks would argue, to create some sort of resistance, but at the same time also archive ideas that are generated from the contemporariness of society itself. So the very fact that we started doing sociology is connected to how there were changes in the larger academic and social structures, as well as the sustenance of it is connected to the reproduction of that knowledge beyond the academy. And particularly because young people also feel that there is a need now to write for people beyond the academy, as well as at the same time, it is a labor of love, and we have not really, made it funded. We have kept it voluntary. We are also, independent in that sense. And there is a larger reasoning behind it, that we wanted to, publish as free content as possible, as academically oriented content as possible, without having to bend to, other forces. And that is where the centrality of, how we are thinking about it as a space that gives academic freedom, as well as this platform for young people. So I'm going to stop here, and then, maybe when we have questions, take up anything that, you may want to ask. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much, Rituparna. Thank you so much. And we have one raised hand, but I think we can take it towards the end. Now over to you, Dr. Deepali. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much to Ideas JGU, and of course Dr. Gayatri Balu for the very kind invitation to Doing Sociology to come and talk about us, share our experiences of translating knowledge. When Dr. Rituparna has talked in detail about how we started this blog, I would still like to pick up the idea of translating knowledge, because my location right now is very interesting. I teach in a regional university, one of the biggest regional universities in the state where I work in. And, having worked here for the past few years, I've realized that, there is a very big need. There is a huge need to take disciplines like sociology, other social sciences alike, and research in general to the publics. So with that, I would just briefly like to, firstly, talk about how we sort of started this, because taking knowledge to wider publics, of course, Dr. Rituparna talked about it, is about bridging gap between the academy and the outside. But in the context like India, it is also bridging the gaps between regions, right? Because public sociology is something which was huge in America, and rightly so, because as Michael Burawoy had argued for it. And why so? Because in the US, academics was quite disconnected from the broader public. So what you were doing in universities, what you were doing in laboratories, what you were doing in classrooms had not a direct connection with people outside those spaces. But of course, in India, it was very different, because post-independence, the task, the nation building project had to connect what was going on in research, what was going on, with what was going on in the economy, what was happening to society, etc. And Dr. Satish Deshpande talks about it, how initially a discipline like sociology, when it started, it was not very connected to the publics, but early on, this realization that you cannot dissociate from society as such came into being. And that idea also resonated with the three of us, the co-founders of this of doing sociology. And that's how we started this platform at a time when all of us were locked in our homes in very different places. And our own experiences taught us that the digital or the online has become huge. I mean, I would personally say I love to go back to books. I love to read them, but the context is very different. We now teach students who rely on a lot of online content. And often in our discussions, we talked about how students might not really know where to go to, because there are so many websites or so many YouTube channels where you can easily you might Google a concept in sociology, and you would get a list of videos related to it, or you might get a list of reading materials. And of course, now you have artificial intelligence. So you have very often I would find students using the chat GPT to probably just find in a word. But what happens with that is, because young students very often, in my experience of having taught in the past few years, would realize they will not be able to distinguish between what is knowledge that should be taken in, and what maybe claims to be knowledge might but not be correct in that sense. So I think this is where we also figure that our role towards the publics becomes important, and towards students of sociology and other social science disciplines, is to probably have a repository of knowledge, where we try to cover a plethora of things. Maybe have a series on concepts, where we talk about a concept, and look at literature which has been which has taken shape around that concept in the past, or in the contemporary times, or what and besides, say, series on concepts, we would also do interviews and talk to people who've been doing pioneering work, and also for years who've been researching on certain themes, and also to people who are very new in the area but who are doing some amazing work. So this was the idea. And well, and most of you would know, and my colleagues and friends here would also agree that publishing or academic writing, not only in India, elsewhere also, is often locked behind paywalls, or uh, sometimes often jargons, right? So I think with doing sociology, what we tried to do was to because it's all free, it's all as Rituparna mentioned, that it's a labor of love. It's independent, so we don't have paywalls. Everything is free. We encourage people to read, and we don't charge anything. And so that was a very important aspect of our doing sociology. And of course, when I talk about jargons, I would say I think all of us have gone through our phases where we would read articles which might be full of jargons but might not really make sense. maybe we can take this up in the Q&A session if some of you would like to ask this. But what we realized very early on that, when you write, you have to write uh, in a way that people who might, be very new to the subject, the discipline, they understand it. And this is what we encouraged also, or we try to, when we take in pieces or we review submissions, we try to make it a point to make it simple, not to take away the academic rigor of the writing or the work, but just to make it, understandable by students who are either located in Delhi or who are located outside the country, or maybe in, in one of the remote places in the country. So that was this idea. And besides this, of course, uh, the idea was to take forward the, sort of the emancipatory role of sociology. I mean, sociology has a very interesting history. We don't have time for that now, but if we go back and look at it, in very often in places and in situations where the discipline has come about, it has been connected to big social, to or social changes of a very large degree. So when we just started this blog, the pandemic was huge. And then, of course, the society, I mean, even now, so many things are happening around us. So instead of just taking the common sense knowledge and understand, just gathering information about what is happening around us, we try to encourage, our writers or our viewers to think sociologically about, say, policy, public debates, and also about everyday life. Therefore, our content, whatever we've published till now, varies from maybe something to do with, everyday life, maybe everyday food, to, policy which is being made at the global or the national level, and of course, to engage with public debates. Well, early on, I had also talked about regional universities, and I would like to emphasize a little more on them, because right now, I don't know how many of you have had the experience of being located in any regional university. Perhaps because all of you are students of, I assume, development practice, so maybe some of you who would be interested in education and would like to go and see, state universities, regional universities, how they function. That would be very interesting. But regional universities have the challenge, more so because, the classrooms there do not have quality content, and there are different reasons for it. The syllabi or the curriculums are quite regulated. So students come from vernacular educational backgrounds. So now, sociology or any other social science discipline is very I mean, say, except for, say, economics, I'd say, are very language heavy. So you have a lot of writing, a lot of good writing, which has emerged, in English or, in the West, and then has been translated. So those translations, of course, are not available. I can't say for other, regional languages, but say in Hindi, for instance, you might not find a translation of some of the, classical sociology books. So students are reading what would be a very substandard translation or an interpretation of a book by some author or some publishing house. So naturally, by the time the knowledge that emerged in a particular context, or was put forth by a thinker or a theorist, it reaches the student located in a regional university. It loses, the essence of it. So you might know a term, you might know what. For instance, you might know what class is, but you will only know it as, a phrase which can be defined in two lines, but you might not know the nitty-gritties of it, or the nuances of what class is and how it emerged and why it's significant. So therefore, regional universities, one, due to lack of books, second, due to, the challenges of having regular classes, presence of regular faculty, they face these challenges. So in a time where, the ideas of, one nation, one student, where bridging barriers between regions and, sort of creating a uniform curriculum syllabi are being put forth, we I mean, it will be hard to see a situation where students located in the margins are left behind because they don't have, the means to cope up with the proposed syllabi. So at that, keeping this in mind also, what doing sociology tries to do is encourage these students. And what is very interesting is, of course, we've tried to publish pieces in the different languages. We've had pieces in Assamese, we've had in Telugu. So we've always encouraged, our writers to send in pieces in, different languages. And I think this is something that three of us, when we started the blog, we were very particular about. And another point which I thought would be, important to take up here, could be debatable, is, social is the fact that how social media also influences a lot of what is happening within the publics, right? Some of you would be surprised to know, or perhaps not surprised to know, that social media traction plays a very important role in determining how knowledge is taken to the publics. So this is sort of related to the first point that I was making about writing for the wider audiences who are not in the academy, not in universities, not in institutions. Social media, as Manuel Castells would tell you, has, its communicative part determines how public opinion is shaped, how, networks operate. So and we do know for sure that research scholars or early career researchers are doing such amazing research in different places, but they do have very limited opportunities to share it with the larger publics. So when we publish pieces, I think very often, the people who publish with us come back and tell us that, or if we, end up meeting them in a conference or elsewhere, in person, they would come and tell us that how, writing for doing sociology helped them take their writings to maybe an audience or to people who they would otherwise have never been in touch with. So I think that is something which we which doing sociology tries to do, is to, because we very actively use our social media handles, also realizing that, social media plays such a significant role in today's time. So yes, finally, of course, see, I would say a discipline like sociology has been a very common subject in competitive exams in India. Now, what that has done to the discipline is, now you have a lot of coaching centers, you have a lot of YouTube channels, or you have, some several online platforms which are, sort of creating content again for people to just say clear certain exams, perhaps the civil services or exams such as that. And they what these platforms or online or these sites or channels are doing is they pick up words and concepts, and they create knowledge which is very similar to or they would encourage mugging up concepts, or they would not encourage rather ways of thinking sociologically. So now this is a challenge. This is a challenge that we three who are associated with the discipline and who really love the discipline wanted to sort of I mean, of course, make a small change there. So yes. And yeah, Dr. Patgiri talked about the genesis of sociology, how it started. And of course, we've come a long way. In 5 years, we've learned a lot. We've sort of also, come up with different series. We have come up with different types of content, and that has all been shaped by sometimes or very often the feedback that we get, or our own learning from teaching and doing research for some time now. And yes, if you look at our objectives, mentoring young students is something which was top priority for us. Mentoring students as well as democratizing knowledge. So when we talk about publishing pieces from very young scholars to very seasoned academics, or the idea about publishing pieces from the global north or the global south, these are all based on the idea that we want to democratize knowledge. because we do know, as Rituparna had mentioned, that universities outside India do have these academic blogs. The LSE, for instance, has several blogs. Some of you might have written for them, but such blogs lack in India, and many students or many researchers might not have the training to be able to write for blogs outside. So we try to mentor students also, because some of our authors are very young students in their masters, some even in their bachelors, who send in pieces, and then we as an editorial team, we send in comments and suggestions so that they improve the writing. And then we also sometimes suggest books, reading materials, which helps them to perhaps learn better about the subject. So yes, democratizing knowledge, mentoring young students, have been our key objectives. And in terms of the content that we've been producing, apart from the book reviews, we also have book discussions where we talk to some of the authors uh, about their book, how it came into being, and we also interview academics who've been known to work on certain key areas within the discipline, and within social sciences broadly. And what is interesting is, these interviews and discussions are always based on academic literature. So, while some might feel that, these interviews are very like, uh, uh, I mean, they're just very random, not based on questions. But I would like to mention here that, we make it a point that, we keep the interviews text-based. And there's a very important reason behind that, because, while we create content online, while we create knowledge, or while we produce videos or interviews which students can go and listen to, we simultaneously encourage people to go back and read the book, because that has been the training that we've received. And we often learn that the same text can be interpreted in different ways. That happens with all of us. We read a book, a book that you would have read 3 years ago would be completely different. 3 or 10 years ago would make, if you go back and pick it up today, you would understand it or make sense of it in a very different way. So I think it's important to, yes, encourage reading. And yes, therefore, our interviews are very much based on books and academic literature, journal articles, etc. And in our journey of doing sociology, we've also had a lot of encouragement and a lot of support from people who've been, and also institutions who've been, very, I would say, generous and kind to, and also understanding, our ideas and projects. They've been encouraging enough to collaborate with us, and we've been fortunate enough to collaborate not only in, for say a discussion and interview, but we've tried to create something more substantial or something which stays about. For instance, I would like to talk about two of our, major collaborations. One was with the Henry Jackson School of International Studies, University of Washington, where we started what was known as the North-South Dialogue. And within this project, what we tried to do is create, a platform where students located both in the global North and the global South would have an opportunity to discuss their research, especially those scholars PhD students who had finished their fieldwork, had completed their field notes and were back and wanted to share their field experiences. So we had a team at the Henry Jackson School, and we had, our team was here, and we managed to speak to different scholars, and it was very interesting. We spoke to somebody who was working on sports infrastructure in India. We spoke to somebody who was looking at the question of social mobility, and so on and so forth, and very interesting topics like education in Delhi, etc., etc. And it was very interesting to listen to people. And also, I think, I think as a, as a young student or as a PhD student in your final stages, if you get opportunities to talk about your work, I think it feels great. So we are, the people who collaborated with us on this project were also really happy with it. So that was one. And the other collaboration we had was with the Department of Sociology at Cotton University. And what we did there was we had a course, sort of an online series on research methodology. And, the faculty at the Department of Sociology at Cotton University, Assam, were very, encouraging their team and us. We did this series where we brought in scholars from different places, from different universities in India. And they talked about different aspects and dimensions of research methodology. And for students of Cotton University and those of our viewers who joined us online or registered for the course, they learned a lot from there, I'm sure. And so these were some of the concrete ways in which we've been trying to take forward our platform and also create collaborative work and knowledge. And perhaps you can discuss more about what we've been doing in the Q&A session. Yeah, we've also had some live events like the webinar that is happening here, where we've spoken to people. And we also have had discussions on topics which, like for instance, there was a panel discussion on the question of tribes in India, or the theme of teaching in a particular. So, Professor Chaudhary was very keen on, learning about how disciplines are shaped by institutions. So we've had discussions on what it is to be teaching in, say, a state, for instance, in Assam. We've had that discussion, and so on and so forth. And yeah, I would encourage all of you to go to our platform, go to Doing Sociology, look at our content. And I keep on telling my students, and I'd like to, tell you all also, that you might, like just going to our website and going to our platform, you will find something or the other which would, be really helpful to you to uh, in your academic journey. And since you all would be students of development practice, I think, once you go back, the idea is to take whatever knowledge you learn to the field. I think we would encourage a lot of you to come back and write for us and share your insights, because in our interviews, we make it a point to ask, researchers or authors of books to share their own research journeys, the challenges they faced, what methodologies they used, or the methods, techniques that they adopted, and with the hope that it would encourage as well as help young scholars and researchers. So yes, thank you so much, and over to you, Dr. Gayatri.
Thank you so much, Deepali, and thank you to both of you. And I will immediately go to the questions. And we have Alicia Fatima, really sorry, your hand was up from the beginning. Please ask your question. You can unmute and ask. Alicia, are you there? Okay. I think the hand was probably up by mistake. I don't know. But there's a long question in the chat box. Maybe we can take that first. I'll just read it because we are recording also. Thank you for this wonderful webinar. Can you please elaborate on the following? Given that we are now living in an age where information is widely available and accessible through the internet, the age where information is very much unregulated through internet algorithms and artificial intelligence, and students heavily relying on sources like ChatGPT. In such an age, how can the social science disciplines like sociology and history deal with unregulated stuff available on the internet, particularly on issues that are politically sensitive and unsettling? How can social sciences deal with the new emergence of information spaces like internet, which are particularly vulnerable to the spread of misinformed and politically motivated ideas and narratives? Given that there is already a recognized disconnect between academy and the public, how can sociology And disciplines like history do their role when it comes to their public life? The question is from Irfan Ahmad Butt. Yeah. Either of you can go first.
Okay, so let me first, take it up. Thank you for that question. It's very pertinent and, of course, something that is debated a lot in terms of what would social scientists do, or rather be like, if there is no need of specialist knowledge. In fact, very recently, there's been this huge controversy or debate on history, public history, and who should be writing history. Considering that in the present circumstances, history is one of the disciplines which gets easily distorted. A lot of public historians, as they would like to call themselves, have taken it up on themselves to also create content using YouTube as a free platform. And then there's also been an academic rebuttal that it is not accurate representation of history. However, the point that emerged from that debate is that definitely there is a disjunct between academics and non-academics or the public, and the public historians were actually trying to bridge the gap that exists in terms of how can we even think about taking accurate history to an audience which may not know the hows of how to identify. That actually brings me to this question of how do we understand authentic sources. So for me, I think authenticity is something which has to be rooted in how scholarship or any knowledge has been validated by scientific principles and ideas of scientific rationality. So why are journals seen as credible resources is because they are embedded in peer review of scholarship, which means that not just the editor, but beyond the editor, there are people who read that scholarship and find it acceptable to be published. So for instance, if you think about either Wikipedia or open access platforms where that kind of peer review doesn't go in, those are not authentic sources. Now, it's a very big question. It's also a question loaded with a lot of anxiety, that how do we deal with this, a barrage of information where you don't know what is accurate, what is not, what is the need for social sciences when, AI is available. However, trust me, even now, when AI has taken over, you will see that there is a clear disjunct between how AI writes and how human beings write. So that human idea, the human emotion of writing, it doesn't really get replicated by AI, because at the end of the day, it is a machine, it is a software, right? So at least for people with a kind of training, it is easy to decipher what is AI, which is not AI. But for others as well, this concerted attempts at connecting with the public through people who are either recognized as specialists or who have this passion matters. The question of public sociology is old, but this question of what public history can do, it emerged at this juncture primarily because history has been distorted. So I think a lot of this also depends on the commitment of how academics would want to communicate these ideas. So the digital, in that sense, definitely offers that space where you can take knowledge beyond it. For instance, Harvard University is now going to start classes, which anybody can access freely. So why? The reasoning behind was to challenge, the US administration and say that you cannot restrict knowledge and you cannot, attack the university and restrict what we, want to say. So a similar attempt was also made at JNU, our alma mater, at one point of time, to take knowledge beyond the classroom. So I think, yes, there are these threats, but at the same time, there are also these attempts to take knowledge beyond the classroom.
Maybe I'll just quickly add a line or two
Yeah,
to.
Deepali, before you add, I want to add one component to the question because you spoke that in your lecture. You said something like what knowledge to be taken and what knowledge not to be taken. How you contemplated that question in your classroom. I kind of feel like uh, some insights on that when it comes to an online space would also be. It's just an addition to this question.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Gayatri. And I think that also perhaps there is another question or so. I would try to address both of those things, both of the questions in the points. See, very rightly, as Dr. Rituparna pointed out, that, the AI is not like 100% correct or true, and it lacks that human element, that human touch. And when you read something which has been produced by the AI, or something that has been written by a researcher, you would find a difference. And let me tell you, we do. At least I do find it in my classrooms when students submit assignments. We very, easily get to know what has been written using the AI or not. Okay, but that was on a lighter note. Coming back to the question of, see, when a discipline like sociology, or a discipline, or any other social science discipline, of course, we cannot challenge, we cannot sort of completely dismiss the AI because, or, try to see it as a complete threat to, our discipline or our subjects, because there are now studies on the AI, or how AI is transforming the society. So, I mean, as a sociologist, I would like to, look at, artificial intelligence, probably, with both of these lenses. Coming to the specific question, how to overcome this challenge would be to encourage people to go and read, because sociology or any social science discipline has its own methodology, has its own ways of verifying knowledge. And that verifying knowledge is, what we have are the basics of any social science discipline. So if we go back and read, Comte, Auguste Comte, I mean, the classic writings on, how do you learn things, how do you verify things. You have to follow certain, principles of, or, principles of rationality, or, scientific knowledge. So those methods and those ways of knowing is what, we would encourage, or what, subjects like sociology would try to do. And that would train people and train, younger students, and of course, publics, if we are, promoting that through our writings, to distinguish between what is knowledge verified and what is not, and what is correct knowledge or what is not. Yeah, I'd like to say that. And yes, again, to somebody who's trying to know what books to read, I would say go and read the classics, whatever. Even if you're, preparing for some exam, go back and read the classics, because it's always, uh, uh, like I had mentioned earlier, when you read something on your own, you know it better, and go and discuss it with your, mentors and your teachers. Uh, I think, did I miss the question that you were asking, or I don't know if I've answered
No,
you.
I think I'm also you answered the next question in the chat box as well. That was helpful. One question I want to ask on behalf of probably some attending and some who may listen to this recording later is like if I'm a student in probably a university educational space without much resources, and I also have language difficulty, and I'm trying to write and publish in places here. Ha, with doing sociology, how would you encourage that person to make their first draft and make that submission? Like, what would that steps you would suggest to do? And also some recommendations on uh, other platforms other than doing sociology around the world from India. You think our scholars can go, the younger lot, anybody can go and access where which is doing similar kind of an effort with respect to what doing sociology is doing. You mentioned about LSE blog in between, but if you could give some other recommendations also.
Rituparna, would you like to answer?
Do you want to go ahead, Deepali?
Yeah. Maybe I can ask the first bit of it, honestly, first and foremost, I mean, those of you who would like to write for us, and those of you who might see, none of us are, English is not our mother tongue as such. For most of us, I think majority of us. So I mean, the habit is to write and to rewrite. I mean, when we were in our, PhD journeys, or even before that, our supervisor, who's also on our doing sociology team, would always encourage us to write and rewrite. And that is the only way you can write something. And if you write something, and you feel, like, okay, this is now fit to be emailed to us, you can send it to us. And like I mentioned, when you send in pieces, we of course give suggestions, to rework and to improve on them. So I believe that would help young scholars and researchers. And book reviews would be something that you can begin with if you are, very new and have just started writing. Send an email if you see, a call for book reviewers for on doing sociology, and we can help you. Yeah, and you can review a book for us. Even if we've not given a call, if you feel, if you like a book, review it and send in the review following the review guidelines, and we would be happy to, publish it post, going through the review process, etc. So I think, yeah, that would help. And apart from doing sociology, I'm not sure about, online platforms in India, but outside, you have. I think Dr. Patgiri would be able to, because she's been writing. So Applied Worldwide is one such platform where people write. And I think, Rituparna, you can come in and maybe suggest some other places where people can look up.
Yeah, Rituparna, before you go ahead, can I add one component more to the question? Because I had a couple of questions prepared also. One is this question of like, now we said about how to write, but suppose somebody has nothing to do with sociology as a discipline, like they have not studied it. Even then, can you write for your blog? And also in with respect to how, if there's somebody, an economist in the field doing fieldwork research, but they have a lot of insight which may not actually fit into probably some of the publications which they are looking at, but still lack probably that training in sociology. Please, if you can put some insights into that as well.
Right. I think writing is open to all. It doesn't require any sociological degree or training and any kind of affiliation. So we have published pieces by people who have also maintained their anonymity, like I mentioned, right? Or undergraduate students, postgraduate students, anybody. So it only depends on how the piece is suitable or not, and whether or not it is an original piece of writing. Secondly, I think a lot of us ignore the pre-marination stages of writing, which is the reading and then, of course, the scene. I notice with a lot of students and, particularly young people is that, of course, we are all obsessed with the digital, but we shouldn't be limiting our imaginations only to the digital. So one big question is that how do I come up with a research idea? And only then can you read and write about it, right? You can come up with a research idea if you actually take walks around your campus. You see what happens and what doesn't. So I'm not saying that you need a lot of resources to actually figure out research, go into exotic locations and conduct very fancy fieldwork. Just take a look around your own campuses, your own households, your own lives, and then see, what ideas you have. So a lot of these ethnographies emerge from the walks you might be taking in the markets near you. There was this one very fantastic piece on a student writing about how they visited a juice shop and noticed that it has a gendered element. So the kind of things which are accessible to young people, and it also builds that reading and writing kind of training. The other thing is we encourage citations and references in doing sociology pieces precisely because of this reason, so that people can go back to previously published works. So, sorry. One of the things with scholarship and academic scholarship is that what has been done in the past needn't be discarded. It shouldn't become redundant. It should instead be used in the contemporary. So I encourage a lot of reading, a lot of, in that sense, following the pieces that have already been published. So let's say you're thinking of writing a piece on the public sphere in doing sociology. it might be a good idea to just, keyword search public sphere in the website itself, locate the previously published pieces, and then incorporate them into your writings. It would also give you a sense of engaging with the literature that has been already published. So that's one way of going about it. Deepali already mentioned about the book reviews, that even if, we have not announced a call, but you're reading an academic book and you want to review it, feel free to send us the review. As long as it is, publishable, we do take it into consideration. Apart from doing sociology, there are academic platforms outside which are doing fairly good work. And one of the blogs is, Allegra. It's primarily with a social anthropological bent. Applied Worldwide has a purely sociological bent. Then you have a blog called Ethnography Marginalia, which publishes ethnographic stories and notes. Then there are blogs associated with universities like LSE, as well as, several other universities in the US and UK. There is something called an Everyday Sociology blog, which publishes sociological content. There used to be some blogs which have now shut down because it's not, again, easy to maintain platforms. Reason being, it's a lot of labor and, of course, a lot of, work and commitment. In India as well, I think there is now a new platform called the Dark, where they're publishing book reviews. So there are different kinds of attempts at creating these spaces. One platform is also, I think, Rethinking Economics, and I've seen some content from them as well. So yes, these are some examples.
Thank you so much. There's an anonymous attendee asking, can we get a list of the same blogs that you mentioned right now? I mean, you can probably list. So if you have not taken note, probably you can drop a mail to ideas. Probably we can just give the list. Yeah, and not a question, but there is SASEI in India.
Yes.
Simran
Yes.
Rutra is telling. Yes. Any more questions? Anyone? If not, yeah.
There was a question about
Okay.
UPSC.
I think
UPSC, I don't think we are the right people to give you any sort of guidance, because I am not familiar with UPSC at all. So I'm not the right person to comment on whether or not they will be sufficient for you to sit for the exams.
yeah. So yeah, then mostly that's it. Any more closing comments from your side, Rituparna or Deepali?
No. Just like to thank you again, and thank you everyone else for joining as well.
Yes,
Deepali?
same here. Just no comments. Would very thank you. A big thank you for to Ideas for having us, and yeah, and thank you to all those who listen to us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to both of you. This was, I mean, if I was a student in my BA, MA, I mean, if I had something like this, then I think much of the hard work and the pain we had to go through would have been lessened. So I really hope those who attended gain something from this. We have recorded the video and which will be uploaded on our site as well. So we really hope there's a longer value to what we have spoken today. Please feel free to reach out to any of your official IDs to continue this conversations further. Thank you so much, Rituparna and Deepali. It was great talking to both of you, and hoping this is one of you mentioned about collaborations. I really hope this is the beginning of something more which we as Ideas as a space can do with doing sociology in the future as well. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Gayatri. That would be lovely.
Bye.
Bye.